You need
Daniel
to
always
tell me
wanted
what
to
you
be
know.
alone, the noise of the city, the endless talking, the machines,
I
the
will tell
rushing
you
people.
nothing.
It all tired him. He dreamed of silence, of nights where the only sound was the wind, of mornings where no one knocked on his door. So when he found the old cabin deep in the forest, far from roads and villages, he bought it without a second thought. The cabin looked ordinary, maybe even too ordinary. It was built with dark wood, the roof was heavy with moss, and the windows were small and cloudy. To Daniel it was perfect. No neighbors, no cell signal, no voices, only the forest stretching for miles on his first night. He lit a fire in the old stone fireplace and sat down. The cabin smelled of old wood, dust, and something faintly metallic, but he told himself it was only the pipes. He drank tea, read a little, and let his eyes close. For the first time in years he felt peace, but then came the sound. It was faint at first, a soft scraping. Like metal dragging across stone, he froze, holding his breath. The sound was not above him, not outside in the trees. It was beneath him, under the floor. Daniel stood and looked around. The cabin was simple. One main room, a kitchen corner and a bedroom. The floorboards creaked as he walked. He pressed his ear down to the wooden planks. There it was again. The scraping, followed by something worse, a low growl, deep and muffled. Daniel jumped back, his heart racing. He laughed nervously at himself, saying out loud, "Must be pipes, or maybe an animal." But he knew this cabin had no pipes, and no animal growled like that. He tried to ignore it, went to bed, pulled the blanket tight, still the noises came. All night the next morning, Daniel searched the cabin carefully. He moved furniture, checked under the rugs, and tapped on the floorboards near the fireplace. He found it in a square outline, almost hidden, a trapdoor, heavy and old. Sealed with thick iron chains, dust covered it. But the chains looked newer, as if someone had touched them not long ago. His hands trembled when he touched the lock. Why would a cabin in the middle of nowhere need such a thing? He told himself not to care, not to look, but all day the thought gnawed at him. What was under there? That night the sounds returned, louder than before. The scraping, the growling, and then something new. A voice. It was hoarse, broken, but clear enough. Human. "Free me." Daniel stumbled back, knocking over his chair. He stared at the trapdoor, his mouth dry. Voices did not come from under floors, not real ones. He forced himself to speak. "Who's there?" Silence, then after a long moment, the same voice, soft but filled with anger and pain. "Caged. Trapped. Help me, human." Daniel grabbed his lantern, his heart pounding so hard it hurt. He leaned close to the trapdoor, his breath fogging the cold air. Through the cracks he saw nothing. Only darkness, but he felt it, a heat rising from below. A presence pressing against him. It was not human, it could never be human. For the rest of the night he sat awake by the fire, staring at the chained trapdoor. Every time he closed his eyes, he heard the whisper. Sometimes it begged, sometimes it threatened, and once, just before dawn, he swore the voice laughed. By morning Daniel was exhausted, but his mind was sharper. He had come here for silence, for peace. Instead, he had found chains, growls, and a voice that should not exist. He thought of leaving the cabin, walking back to the nearest town, but something inside him, curiosity or maybe madness, and kept him there. He needed to know what was below that evening. He brought tools, a hammer, a crowbar, and his old hunting knife. The trapdoor sat silent, but he felt watched, as if the thing below knew what he was about to do. He touched the lock again, cold iron biting at his skin. His lantern flickered, shadows moving across the walls like warning hands. Daniel took a deep breath, raised the hammer, and struck. The chains rattled, the lock groaned, but did not break. From below came a sound, not scraping, not growling, but a breath long and deep, like something awakening after years of sleep. Daniel froze, sweat dripping down his face. The voice rose again, stronger this time. "Free me." Before they come, he dropped the hammer, backing away. "They?" he whispered, but the voice gave no answer. Only the sound of chains straining, metal screaming in the dark. The fire died down, the lantern dimmed, and the cabin felt colder than ever. Daniel realized one terrible truth. He was not alone in this cabin. He had never been alone. Daniel did not sleep the next night. He sat near the trapdoor, staring at the chains, waiting for another sound. The forest outside was silent, too silent, as if the trees themselves were holding their breath. Every creak of wood, every sigh of wind made him flinch. The memory of the voice, so deep, commanding, yet broken, haunted him. When the first whisper came again, it made his skin crawl. Human. Why do you wait? Break the chain, set me free. Daniel gripped the hammer tighter, but he didn't strike. His voice was shaky but firm. Who are you? What are you? There was a long pause, then a laugh, low and bitter. You already know. I am not of your kind. Daniel's chest tightened. Every part of him wanted to run, but curiosity pinned him in place. Why are you locked down there? He asked. Because your kind fears what they cannot kill, the voice replied. Daniel felt a chill colder than the night air. The chains rattled faintly. The trapdoor shook. He stepped back, his lantern swinging. Through the cracks he saw a faint light. Not fire, not anything human, but a glow. Like blue lightning trapped in a storm. He forced himself forward again, kneeling near the trapdoor. What happens if I free you? Daniel asked, his whisper trembling. The answer came sharp like a blade. Then I live, and they die. Daniel's mind screamed at him to leave, but his hands worked without thought. He raised the hammer and struck the lock again. This time the iron groaned louder. The chains rattled as if alive. From below came a sound, not words, but a roar. Raw power pressing against the wood. The glow beneath the cracks brightened, filling the room with eerie light. The lock cracked, one chain loosened, and then Daniel froze. For the first time he saw her, an eye, glowing like molten silver, stared up through the gap. It was not human, not even close. The eye burned with fury, but also with pain. Daniel stumbled back, his heart racing. The voice returned, stronger, louder. Finish it, human. Free me before they return. They? Daniel asked again, his voice almost breaking. But the creature below gave no answer. Instead, the chains began to sizzle. Glowing red-hot as if burning her flesh, she screamed, a terrible sound that shook the cabin walls. Daniel dropped his hammer, covering his ears. The air itself seemed to tremble. Then came a new sound, and not from below, but from outside, engines, low and heavy. Humming in the distance, Daniel ran to the window, pulling the curtain aside through the trees. Lights moved, cold, unnatural, weaving between trunks like predators. Ships, small but fast, descending into the forest. Dozens of them, his stomach dropped. The voice below roared again. They are here! The hunters! Free me or you will die with them. Daniel turned to the trapdoor, shaking his head. Why should I trust you? For all I know, you'll kill me too. The glowing eye locked onto his, unblinking. If I wanted you dead, you would already be dust, she snarled, then softer, almost desperate. I do not beg, human, but tonight, I beg. The ground shook as something landed outside. Heavy footsteps crunched on dead leaves, metal clanged. Weapons, armor. A sound Daniel had never heard before, but instinctively feared. The hunters were closing in. He could hear strange voices, harsh and guttural. Speaking a language not of earth, Daniel rushed back to the trapdoor. His hands bled as he struck the lock again and again. The iron bent, then snapped, the final chain fell. Clattering against the floor, the trapdoor burst open with a blast of heat and light. Daniel stumbled back, shielding his face. From the darkness below, she rose. The alien warrior stood taller than any human, her body scarred but powerful. Her skin shimmered faintly, as if etched with glowing patterns. Chains still hung from her wrists, smoking where they had burned into her flesh. Her eyes, silver and fierce, locked onto Daniel's for a moment. Silence. The air heavy with something ancient. Then she spoke, her voice a mixture of rage and pride. I am free. Daniel stepped back, holding the broken hammer like a useless weapon. She looked at him, tilting her head. You are braver than most of your kind, she said. He swallowed hard. I don't know if I just saved myself, or doomed us both. Before she could answer, the cabin door shook violently. A deafening bang echoed as something struck it from outside. The hunters had arrived. The alien warrior's eyes narrowed, her chains glowing brighter. They will not stop until I am dead. And now you are marked too. Daniel's blood ran cold. He looked toward the door, then back at her. What do we do? He whispered. She bared her teeth in something between a smile and a snarl. We fight. The door burst open. Splintering into pieces, dark figures rushed in, armored, carrying weapons that hummed with strange energy. They paused only for a moment when they saw Daniel, a human standing with their escaped prey. Then they charged. The warrior roared, tearing the last chains from her wrists. Energy burst from her body in a wave of blue flame. The hunters were thrown back, weapons clattering. Daniel shielded his eyes from the light, the air scorching hot. He realized the truth in that moment. She was no ordinary prisoner. She was something far greater, far more dangerous. As the hunters regrouped outside, Their leader raised a strange device. Daniel heard a sharp signal blast through the forest. The warrior's face darkened. "They have called for more," she hissed. Daniel's hands trembled as he tightened his grip on the hammer. "More," he whispered. Her silver eyes burned brighter. "An army!" The cabin shook as the hunters outside regrouped. The shattered door lay in pieces on the floor, letting in the cold night air. Daniel's breath clouded in front of him, but his hands burned with sweat. The alien warrior stood tall beside him, her chain still glowing faintly, her silver eyes burning like fire in the dark. She did not look afraid. She looked hungry for the fight outside. More shadows moved through the trees. Daniel could hear the crunch of armored boots, the heavy steps of creatures larger than men, and the low hum of weapons charging. Every instinct in him screamed to run. But his legs would not move, his body trembled. Yet his mind was locked on one truth. If he ran, he would not survive. If he stayed, maybe. Just maybe he had a chance. The warrior turned her head slightly, speaking to him without looking away from the door. "Take a weapon, human," she said, her voice sharp and calm. Daniel's eyes darted around the room. The only weapons he had were human tools. His hunting rifle, his axe, and the hammer still slick with his own blood. He grabbed the rifle, loading it with shaking hands. The first hunter stepped into the broken doorway. Its armor was dark, marked with glowing red lines. Its helmet shaped like the skull of some beast. It raised a weapon that looked like a staff fused with a blade. Humming with energy, Daniel aimed his rifle. But the warrior moved first. With a roar, she leapt forward. Her chains cracking like whips, she struck the hunter across the chest, sending it flying back into the night. Two more rushed in, weapons flashing with blue sparks. The warrior blocked a strike with her forearm, sparks exploding. She twisted, breaking one hunter's arm with a sickening snap. Daniel fired his rifle, the shot echoing like thunder. The bullet struck the other hunter's shoulder. Knocking it off balance, it turned toward him with a hiss. Glowing eyes narrowing, Daniel froze, pulling the bolt back too slowly. The hunter raised its weapon to strike, but the warrior slammed her chain around its neck, snapping it with a brutal twist. Silence fell for a brief moment. Daniel's ears rang from the gunshot, his chest heaving. 3 hunters lay broken on the floor, their armor cracked, their blood strange and glowing. The warrior looked down at them with disdain. "They are weak alone," she said. Then her eyes narrowed, staring through the doorway. "But they never hunt alone," as if answering her words. The forest outside lit up with dozens of red eyes, the night filled with clicks, growls, and the steady march of many feet. The sound rose and fell like a war drum. Daniel's knees weakened. "There are so many," he whispered. The warrior clenched her fists. "Good," she said. Daniel looked at her in disbelief. "Good? We're going to die." She turned her silver gaze on him, unblinking. "Then die fighting." The cabin walls shuddered as something heavy slammed against them. Windows cracked, dust fell from the ceiling. Daniel grabbed his lantern and smashed it against the floor, fire spreading quickly across the wooden boards. "If they want us," he said, forcing courage into his voice, "they can burn with us." The warrior gave a sharp grin, approving, but instead of waiting, she grabbed Daniel's arm, pulling him toward the back of the cabin. "There is another way," she said. She kicked through the rotting boards of the wall, dragging him outside into the freezing air. The forest loomed, dark and endless. Daniel stumbled after her, clutching his rifle. Behind them, the cabin burned, smoke curling up into the sky like a signal. The hunters roared as they saw the flames, their glowing eyes turning toward the fugitives. The chase began. The warrior moved with impossible speed, her feet silent on the forest floor. Daniel ran as best he could, his breath ragged, lungs burning. Branches whipped his face, roots caught his boots. But he pushed forward. Behind them, the hunters closed in, their weapons flashing between the trees. Bolts of blue light cut through the dark, striking trunks, exploding bark into shards. One blast tore past Daniel's head, slamming into a tree and splitting it apart with a thunderous crack. "Faster, human," the warrior barked. "I'm not built like you," Daniel shouted back, nearly tripping over a fallen log. She grabbed his arm and yanked him upright. Dragging him forward, her strength was terrifying, but it saved him from falling into the dirt. Suddenly, a glowing net of energy shot through the trees. It wrapped around the warrior, burning into her skin. She roared in pain, falling to one knee. 3 hunters stepped from the shadows, pulling the net tighter, their voices hissing in triumph. Daniel raised his rifle, hands shaking. He fired once, twice, 3 times, bullets sparking against armor. One hunter fell, but the others advanced. Daniel's rifle clicked empty. No. No, no, no. He cursed, fumbling with the reload. The warrior, struggling under the net, shouted, "Cut it! The chains!" Daniel dropped the rifle and grabbed his hunting knife. He slashed at the glowing net, sparks burning his hands. The blade screamed against the energy field. But finally it tore open. The warrior surged to her feet, ripping the rest apart with her bare hands. Her chains glowed brighter, wrapping around her arms like living fire. With one swing, she decapitated the 2 hunters. Their helmets clattering into the dirt, Daniel collapsed against a tree. Gasping for breath, the warrior towered over him, her body steaming with heat. "You fight like prey," she said bluntly. Daniel almost laughed despite himself. "And you fight like a nightmare." She tilted her head, considering him. "Perhaps together. We survive." Before Daniel could answer, the forest ahead filled with light. A massive ship descended, its engines shaking the ground. Trees bent under the force, leaves tearing free. The hunters raised their voices in a chilling chorus, as if calling their master. The warrior's face hardened. "They bring their leader," she whispered. Daniel stared at the ship, his stomach turning to ice. "What? What kind of leader?" She looked down at him, her silver eyes grim. "The kind who never leaves survivors." The ship landed with a thunderous crash. Its doors opening slowly, smoke and fire poured out. A shadow stepped forward, taller and heavier than the rest. Its armor glowed with bright crimson lines, its weapon a massive blade humming with energy. The hunters fell silent, bowing their heads. Daniel felt his legs weaken, his rifle useless in his shaking hands. The warrior straightened, chains sparking like lightning. Her voice dropped into a low growl. "Run if you must, human." "But I will not," Daniel swallowed hard. His throat dry, he thought of running, of hiding, of leaving this madness behind, but his feet would not move. Something inside him, fear, pride, maybe both, held him still. He raised his empty rifle anyway, standing beside her. The warrior looked at him with surprise, then gave the smallest nod. Together they faced the leader. The forest held its breath, the hunters waiting. The night itself seemed to pause, then the leader raised its blade, pointing it at Daniel, and the battle began. The forest glowed red under the massive hunter ship. Engines shook the ground, tearing leaves and branches from the trees. Daniel's heart pounded like a drum in his chest. His rifle felt light and useless in his hands. Beside him, the alien warrior stood tall, chains sparking around her arms like living fire. She did not tremble, she did not flinch. She looked at the hunters as if she had been waiting for this moment for years. The leader stepped forward, armored like a walking mountain. Its blade hummed with a sound that made Daniel's bones ache. Every hunter around them bowed low, their glowing eyes fixed on their commander. The leader's voice thundered through the trees, deep and cruel. "You should have rotted in chains." "Warrior," the alien warrior lifted her head, silver eyes blazing. "And you should have remembered who caged me." She whipped her chains, sparks slicing through the night air. The leader's growl shook the silence. And then he raised his blade, pointing straight at Daniel. "This human dies first." Daniel froze. His breath catching, the hunters surged forward. A tide of armored shadows, weapons glowing. The warrior roared, stepping in front of Daniel. "Stay behind me, human," she shouted, but Daniel shook his head, fear making him bold. "If I hide, we both die." The first hunter lunged, weapon raised high. Daniel fired his rifle, the shot striking its chest plate, cracking it open. The warrior slammed her chain into another, crushing its helmet like glass. The forest exploded with noise, gunfire, roars, the clash of chains and blades. Daniel fired again and again, the recoil slamming into his shoulder. He didn't aim for perfection, he aimed for survival. Every shot slowed the hunters, every scream bought them seconds. The warrior moved like a storm, her chains wrapping around weapons. Snapping them in half, she struck with brutal precision, tearing through armor, blood spraying in glowing arcs. But the hunters were many, and they pressed in from all sides. Daniel felt a blade slice across his arm. Searing with heat, he cried out, stumbling back. The warrior turned with a roar, smashing the attacker into a tree so hard the trunk cracked in two. "Stay alive, human," she barked. Daniel gritted his teeth, pressing his bleeding arm against his chest. "I'm trying." The leader stepped closer, cutting through his own men as if they were nothing. His blade sliced trees apart with each swing, sparks raining from the ground. The warrior's eyes narrowed. her chains wrapping tighter around her arms. "You want me?" she shouted, her voice echoing through the woods. "Then come and bleed." The leader charged, the ground shaking with his steps. The warrior met him head-on, chains colliding with the glowing blade. The sound was like thunder. Echoing through the forest, Daniel stumbled back. Shielding his face from the sparks, every strike shook the ground. Every clash sent shockwaves through the trees. The two titans fought with fury, neither giving ground. Daniel knew he couldn't stand aside. He grabbed his axe, gripping it tight, and rushed toward the nearest hunter. The alien turned in surprise, underestimating him. But Daniel swung with desperate strength, the axe sinking into its side. The hunter screeched, falling to the ground. Daniel pulled the axe free, panting. He wasn't a soldier, but tonight he fought like one. The battle raged. The warrior and the leader clashed again and again, trees splintering under their blows. Daniel hacked and shot at the hunters who came too close, his arms trembling, his chest heaving. The air stank of smoke, blood, and burning energy. The night was alive with screams. The forest, once silent, became a battlefield, but numbers began to overwhelm them. For every hunter that fell, two more took its place. Daniel slipped, falling to his knees, his rifle empty. A hunter loomed over him, weapon raised high. Daniel raised his arms, knowing it was the end. But the warrior's chain lashed out, wrapping around the hunter's neck. Tearing its head from its shoulders, she pulled Daniel to his feet. Her face fierce. "Do not fall, human, not yet." They stumbled deeper into the forest. Dragging the fight with them, the leader followed, his glowing blade cutting down trees in his path. Daniel and the warrior burst into a clearing where moonlight shone down. The ground here was soft, a marshy pit filled with water and roots. The warrior stopped, breathing heavily, her chains flickering weakly. Her body shook with exhaustion, though she tried to hide it. Daniel noticed the burns across her arms, the cuts along her chest. She was bleeding, glowing blood dripping onto the wet ground. "You're hurt," Daniel said. She glanced at him with a sharp look. "I do not die so easily." The hunters surrounded the clearing, their red eyes glowing in the mist. The leader stepped into the moonlight, his blade humming like a living thing. "This ends now," he declared. The warrior stood tall, her chains snapping into position. Daniel tightened his grip on the axe, his body screaming in pain. But his mind said if this was the end, he would not run. The hunters advanced, weapons raised. The leader pointed at Daniel. "Kill the human first." Time slowed. Daniel's breath hitched, his vision narrowing. The hunters rushed forward, but before they could strike, a sound tore through the sky, a roar louder than thunder. The clouds above split apart as another ship descended, massive silver glowing with strange symbols. The hunters froze, their heads snapping upward in shock. The leader growled, his blade lowering for the first time. The warrior's silver eyes widened, not with fear, but with something like recognition. Her voice dropped to a whisper. "No, it cannot be them." Daniel looked at her, confused. "Who?" he asked, his voice barely audible over the roar. The warrior's chest rose and fell, her face pale in the moonlight. "My people," she said. "But if they are here, then Earth is no longer safe." The hunters scattered, retreating into the trees like shadows. Even the leader stepped back, his crimson armor flickering as if uncertain. The great silver ship lowered, its light flooding the forest. Daniel felt the ground tremble under his feet. The warrior clenched her fists, her chains glowing weakly. "This is worse than death," she whispered. The ship's doors opened and a figure stepped out, tall, regal, armored in silver with eyes like stars. The hunters bowed low, even the leader dropping to one knee. The figure's gaze swept the clearing, finally landing on Daniel. The air grew cold, silence pressing down on the world. Then the figure spoke, voice deep and unshakable. "The human belongs to us." Daniel's heart stopped. The warrior's face hardened, her chains lifting once more. "No," she whispered. She stepped in front of Daniel, her silver eyes burning. "He belongs to me." The clearing was silent. Drowned in silver light, the hunters knelt, heads pressed to the dirt, their crimson eyes dimmed in obedience. Even their brutal leader bowed, blade lowered as if afraid to look up. Only Daniel and the alien warrior remained standing, the silver glow burning against their skin. The figure from the great ship stepped forward, armor shining like liquid metal, symbols glowing along the plates. Its eyes burned white, no pupil, no iris, only starlight. When it spoke, the air trembled. "The human belongs to us." Daniel's stomach turned cold. his hands gripping the axe so tightly his knuckles went white. He had fought hunters, bled in the forest, and faced death more times than he could count tonight. But nothing in his bones prepared him for this voice. This presence, it wasn't a threat, it wasn't anger, it was law. As if the universe itself had spoken, the alien warrior stepped in front of him, chain sparking weakly in the silver glow. Her chest rose and fell, her voice low but steady. "No," she said, her eyes, burning silver fire, locked on the figures. "He belongs to me," the hunters hissed, some raising their weapons, but the figure lifted one hand, and all fell silent. The forest held its breath. Even the wind seemed to stop. The figure studied the warrior for a long, heavy moment, then its voice rolled again. "You were lost to us. Chained by the hunters, we thought you dead. Yet you return, bringing a human." It paused, its gaze shifting to Daniel. "Do you know what he is, warrior?" Daniel's throat tightened. What he is? His heart pounded, sweat running cold down his back. He looked at the warrior, desperate for an answer. Her lips parted, her voice barely a whisper. "He is not what they think." The figure's head tilted. "Lies do not suit you," it said. It stepped closer, the ground trembling under its armored boots. Daniel took a step back, but the warrior held her ground, chains glowing faintly. "You will not touch him," she snapped. The hunters stirred, their leader rising slowly to his feet. His crimson blade lifted, glowing with violent heat. "Then let me cut the human down," he growled. "He bleeds like prey, he fights like prey. He dies like prey." Daniel's blood boiled, anger shoving aside his fear. He raised the axe, stepping beside the warrior. "I'm not your prey," he spat. His voice cracked, but he stood tall. "I've killed your hunters. I'll kill more if I have to." The warrior glanced at him, silver eyes widening with something like surprise. Then a smile, faint, dangerous, curved her lips. For the first time since he met her, she looked proud. The silver-armored figure lowered its hand. "No one kills him." "Not yet," it said, its gaze locked on Daniel. "The human must come with us. His blood carries what even he does not know." Daniel's chest tightened. His blood. He wanted to demand answers, scream until they told him what they meant. But before he could speak, the warrior snapped. "He stays with me." "He chose me, not you." The silver figure's voice sharpened. "You defy your own kind for him." The warrior's chains lifted, her body trembling but unyielding. "He freed me when you abandoned me. He fought when you hid. He bled when you would have let me rot." Her voice shook the air. "So yes, I defy you." Gasps echoed from the hunters, whispers rippling like snakes in the grass. The leader snarled, stepping forward. "This is treason," he spat. "Then let blood decide." He raised his blade high, and before anyone could stop him, he charged. The warrior moved instantly, her chain wrapping around his strike, sparks flying. Daniel stumbled back as the forest exploded in violence again. Hunters roared, surrounding the clearing. The silver-armored figure raised its hand, and suddenly, the world froze. Every hunter stopped, their bodies locked mid-motion. Even the leader's blade hung in the air. Unmoving, the warrior's chain stiffened. Stuck in place, Daniel blinked, his body the only one still free. He gasped, looking around. What did you do?" The figure turned to him, eyes glowing brighter. "You are not supposed to exist," it said. "You are a mistake in the pattern. A fracture in the bloodlines." Daniel's pulse hammered, his mouth dry. "What does that even mean?" he shouted. But the figure stepped closer, towering over him. "Human blood was never meant to touch ours. Yet here you stand, alive, resistant, fighting where others would break." The warrior strained against the frozen chains, her voice cracking. "Do not tell him," she screamed. But the figure ignored her. Instead, it knelt before Daniel, its silver eyes burning into his. "You carry her mark in your blood," it whispered. "You are already bound to her." Daniel's head spun, his heart thundering and his ears bound. He turned to the warrior. Her face was pale, her lips trembling. Her silver eyes met his, and in them he saw the truth. She had known. She had always known. His chest tightened, a storm of anger, confusion, and betrayal tearing through him. You knew?" he whispered. The warrior's chains flickered, her voice shaking. "I wanted to tell you. But if you knew, you might have run." Daniel's grip on the axe trembled. His vision blurring, he thought of the battles, the blood, the moments where he had almost died. The way she had stood over him, protected him. The way she had looked at him like he was more than just a human, and now, Now it was all tied to some hidden bond in his blood. The silver figure rose again. "You see, human," it said, "you are not her savior. You are her prisoner. She cannot exist without you now." The words stabbed deeper than any blade. Daniel staggered back, breath shaking. His whole world tilted, his trust cracked, and yet, when he looked at the warrior, his chest hurt even more, because he wanted to hate her, but he couldn't. Not after everything they had faced. The warrior's voice broke through the silence, her silver eyes shimmering. "Daniel, you are not my prisoner, you are my choice." She pulled against the frozen chains, blood dripping from her wrists. "I did not save you because of the bond. I saved you because I wanted to." The figure's eyes narrowed. "Lies," it thundered, but Daniel's gaze locked on hers. Her words cut through the storm, fragile but sharp, and for a heartbeat he believed her. The silver-armored figure stepped back, raising a glowing hand. "Then prove it," it said. The air shimmered. The hunters released from their frozen state, roaring as the battle resumed. The leader surged forward, blade raised high. The warrior broke her chains free, her silver light blazing. Daniel gripped his axe, his blood pounding. This time he wasn't fighting to survive. He was fighting for the truth. The leader's blade came down. The warrior blocked, Daniel swung. The clash echoed through the night. And above them the silver ship hummed, its weapons charging, its lights brightening. The forest shook as if the sky itself was about to fall. Daniel screamed, the warrior roared, and the silver figure's voice rang out. "Let this world burn." The silver ship above the trees hummed louder. Its light grew brighter, flooding the clearing in ghostly glow. The ground shook, birds scattered in panic, and even the hunters hesitated, their crimson eyes flicking to the sky. Everyone knew what it meant. The ship was preparing to fire. Daniel gripped his axe tighter. Sweat stung his eyes, his chest heaved. His muscles burned from hours of fighting, but he refused to let go. Not now. Not when the truth of everything he had lived for was tearing itself open before his eyes. The alien warrior stood beside him, her chains finally broken, her silver fire blazing brighter than before. Every scar on her body glowed like molten steel. She looked like a living storm. Yet Daniel saw the pain in her eyes, the blood on her wrists. She was still flesh and blood, and she was fighting not only the hunters, but her own people. The leader of the hunters roared, his crimson blade clashing against Daniel's axe. The strike nearly tore the weapon from Daniel's hands. The force rattled through his bones. He staggered but did not fall. The leader sneered, his crimson teeth gleaming. "You bleed too easily, human. You are weak. A broken thing." Daniel spat blood into the dirt, his voice raw but fierce. "Funny. I keep killing your kind for being so strong." The leader lunged again. But before his blade could strike, the warrior leapt between them. Her chain whipped around his weapon, glowing like fire. She wrenched it free, sparks exploding into the night with a roar. She drove her knee into his chest, sending him sprawling back. The hunters hissed, moving in unison. They encircled the pair, weapons raised, their crimson armor gleaming in the silver light. Daniel and the warrior stood back to back. Her fire burned, his chest heaved, their shadows stretching long across the dirt. Above, the silver-armored figure lifted its hand. Its voice cut through the chaos. "End it, burn the forest, burn the human. Burn them all." The ship's weapons whined, energy surging. The air grew heavy, buzzing like thunder trapped in a bottle. Daniel's stomach dropped. If the blast hit, there would be nothing left. No forest, no hunters, no warrior, no him. Nothing but ash, the warrior snarled, her voice breaking through the fear. "They would kill even their own to erase you," she said. Her silver eyes locked on Daniel's. "Run and you die, fight. And maybe we live," Daniel's mind raced. His axe was a toy compared to the ship above. He was nothing against them. But then he remembered the words of the silver figure. "You are already bound to her. Your blood carries what even you do not know." His blood. His bond. He looked down at his trembling hands, then at the warrior's glowing scars. The patterns across her skin seemed to pulse in rhythm with his own heartbeat. It wasn't just a bond, it was a connection. The warrior growled, snapping another hunter's neck with her chain. But Daniel's voice broke through her fury. "Use me," he shouted, her eyes widened. "What?" He stepped closer, pressing his hand against her scorched wrist. Pain shot through him instantly. Fire in his veins, lightning in his chest. He screamed, but did not pull away. "Use me," he repeated, "whatever this bond is. Take it, take everything." The silver-armored figure's head snapped toward them. No, it thundered, but it was too late. The warrior's body shuddered. Her silver fire surging, Daniel's blood burned hotter. The glow on her skin spread onto his arm, crawling up his veins like liquid fire. He fell to his knees, teeth clenched in agony. But through the pain, he felt it. Her strength, her rage, her endless will to fight, and she felt him, his defiance, his stubbornness, his refusal to surrender. Their bond ignited. The clearing exploded in light. The hunters staggered back, shielding their eyes. The leader roared, swinging wildly, but his blade shattered against the blaze. The warrior screamed, her voice rising with Daniel's. Together, their power erupted outward. A shockwave ripped through the clearing, throwing hunters into the trees like broken dolls. The ship above faltered, its weapons flickering. The silver-armored figure stumbled, its flawless voice breaking for the first time. This should not be possible. Daniel forced himself to his feet, his body still glowing faintly with silver fire. His chest heaved, every nerve screaming in pain. But he stood beside the warrior for the first time, equal. The leader crawled from the dirt, blood pouring down his armor. His crimson eyes burned with hate. "You are nothing but prey," he hissed. Daniel's hand tightened on the axe, his voice was low, steady. "Then why are you the one crawling?" The warrior's chain wrapped around the leader's throat. With one final roar, she dragged him into the air and snapped it tight. His body went limp, the crimson light in his eyes fading. Silence fell across the clearing. The hunters froze, staring in disbelief at their fallen leader. For the first time, fear filled their faces. The silver-armored figure stepped forward, its voice cracked with anger. "You defy the order of the stars? You break the chain of blood. This cannot stand." Daniel lifted his axe, his voice raw. "Maybe your order was wrong all along." The warrior's silver fire flared brighter, her eyes locked on the figure. Her voice steady, sharp, unshakable. "Touch him again, and I will tear your ship from the sky." The figure's gaze darkened. The ship above roared louder, its weapons charging again. But this time Daniel felt something new, not fear, not despair, but resolve. The bond burned in his blood, tying him to the warrior. Together they were more than prey. More than prisoner and savior, they were something new. Something the stars themselves had not foreseen. The warrior raised her chain. Daniel raised his axe. The silver-armored figure spread its hands. The ship's core glowed like a sun. The forest shook, trees bending under the weight of what was coming. This was no longer a hunt, no longer survival, it was war. Daniel's chest rose, his voice a ragged whisper. "Then let it burn." The sky cracked open. The ship fired, and the world drowned in light. The sky split open, the silver ship unleashed its core, and light rained down like a newborn star. The forest burned white, shadows vanished, air turned into fire. Daniel's scream was lost in the roar. The warrior's roar tangled with his. For one heartbeat there was nothing but pain, endless and blinding, and then silence. The world did not end. Daniel opened his eyes. Gasping, he was not ash, not dust, not gone, he was still alive. The warrior stood before him, arms spread wide, silver fire burning from her every scar. Her chains glowed like molten suns, her body trembling as she held back the impossible. She had caught the blast, or maybe they had caught it together. Daniel's hands burned. He looked down and saw his veins glowing, silver light pouring through them. His blood was no longer his alone, it was hers too. Their bond was holding the sky itself. The silver-armored figure staggered, its perfect voice breaking. "This cannot be, you are not chosen, you are an accident." A crack in the pattern. The warrior growled, her voice like thunder. "Maybe cracks are where the light gets in." She shoved against the burning wave, her chains whipping upward, splitting the blast. Energy arced into the trees, fire exploding across the forest, but Daniel held with her, his body tearing, his lungs screaming. He dug his boots into the earth. "I won't break," he roared. Together they bent the beam. It split the night sky, tearing clouds apart. The blast missed the clearing, shooting into the heavens instead. Stars vanished, swallowed in the white flood. And then, silence again. The ground smoked, trees lay in ruin. The hunters lay scattered, their armor cracked, their weapons melted. The leader's corpse was ash, only Daniel, the warrior, and the silver-armored figure remained standing. Daniel collapsed to one knee. Gasping for air, the warrior caught him, her fire dimming but her grip steady. Her silver eyes glowed faintly. "You are still alive," she whispered. Almost in disbelief, he managed a bloody smile. "Told you I'm stubborn." The silver figure stepped forward, its voice cold. You defy the stars, you break the order. But you cannot stop what is written. Daniel forced himself to his feet, leaning on the warrior. His chest rose and fell, every breath a war. What's written can be rewritten, he spat. The figure raised its hand. The hunters stirred weakly, their bodies shaking, but their eyes no longer glowed with crimson hunger. They looked at Daniel instead, and for the first time, they hesitated, fear and something else, recognition. The warrior noticed too. She stepped forward, chains dragging across the scorched dirt. Look at him, she commanded. This human fought you, bled with me, faced the fire of your ship and did not break. He is no accident. He is proof. Proof of what? Daniel muttered. She glanced at him, her silver eyes fierce. That prey can rise, that bloodlines are lies, that the galaxy does not belong to them alone. The hunters lowered their weapons, whispers spreading. One dropped his blade into the dirt, another followed. The crimson glow in their eyes flickered out. They were no longer certain who to serve. The silver figure's voice cracked with fury. You would betray your order for a human. But the warrior raised her chain, the silver fire burning brighter again. No, I would betray the stars themselves. For freedom, Daniel's chest tightened. Freedom, that word meant more than survival. It meant choice. It meant no more cages. No more chains, not for her, not for him, not for anyone. The silver figure spread its arms. Then you choose war. Daniel lifted his axe, his voice hoarse but steady. Then war is what you'll get, the ship above groaned. Its hull cracked, flames licking across its silver surface. It had been damaged by its own blast. Smoke poured from its sides, its glow faltered. The forest filled with the sound of failing engines. It was dying. The hunters fell to their knees, some in worship, some in terror. The figure turned back toward the ship, its body trembling. This is not the end, it said. Its glowing form began to fade, dissolving into shards of light. You may kill the body, but the order lives on, and it will find you. With that, the figure vanished. The ship gave one last scream of metal before crashing into the forest beyond. The ground shook, flames rose, the night filled with smoke and ash. Silence returned, only Daniel the warrior, and the few surviving hunters remained. They stared at the two, no longer enemies but witnesses. They bowed their heads not in defeat, but in acknowledgement. For the first time, Daniel realized, they were not kneeling to her, they were kneeling to him too. His axe slipped from his hand, clattering against the dirt. His legs trembled, and he nearly collapsed. The warrior caught him, pulling his arm around her shoulders. You did not run, she whispered. He laughed weakly. Running's never really worked for me. She looked at him, her silver eyes softer now. You are bound to me. Daniel, she said quietly, but not because of blood. Because you chose to stand, he met her gaze. Tired but unbroken. Then we stand together, he said. The forest around them smoldered. The hunters vanished into the shadows, carrying their dead. The ship was gone, the silver figure destroyed, but not forever. The order was still out there, and they would come. Daniel tightened his grip on the warrior's shoulder. His body ached, his blood burned, but his voice was steady. Let them come. They walked into the smoke together. A human and an alien warrior, bound by chains no stars could break. The forest whispered with ash. The night swallowed the flames. But the fire in their bond burned on. It was not the end, it was only the beginning.